right. Welcome everyone to the committee review meeting for Norwood City Schools on March 7th, 2017. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So I know we have some discussion items. I think you're first. Right?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. Laura is here helping me with some of the pieces that she's going to go over. How many of you are very much aware that you're going to be asking the public for a lot of money? You asked them for the levy or for the tax proceeds to do it, but now we're going to be asking investors to step up and buy our debt. Okay, so we're going to be issuing $31 million in debt. And backed by the bond levy, we'll be doing another issue later. And this is what we have put together, working with the underwriter, with our bond counsel. But that's not the whole gist. What I wanted to do tonight, and I told Rob I was kind of excited, some of it comes from a data request that Scott had, but it also comes from, I want you to know what we're doing and how we're doing and how we do business when it comes to your data and your information. And so there's a theme that ties all of this into the bond rating that I don't even think Laura knows yet at this point in time. But I want to start because Scott asked a question. The easiest part of the question, in my opinion, to answer was, kind of want to be able to tell people then and now what was going on. And most of us now in this room have been working together since you virtually got on the board. I was probably the last one added to it. But you guys came on this board with a purpose, right? I want to show you the results of that, because that information, the root of that information, not because you asked about it, but ties into what we're going to be going to Chicago and talking to a ratings analyst about to try to get the best possible rating on our debt that we can get. So let's go to my other little PowerPoint single slide. PowerPoint, right here.
Oh, PowerPoint.
I keep
the one
pointing.
with the P?
The one with the big P. So I called this then and now, and I'm going to show you how this ties in to what we're doing with the bond rating presentation as well. In blue is royal blue or whatever. I tried to match our colors. I probably didn't do it perfectly. Navy. It's not navy. It's not blue enough. Should have got your opinion on that, but you're reading and I didn't know. So 2010, sound familiar? That's about the time I came on in November of 2009. Rob had already been on board. Certainly Scott, Ken, Jerry, you guys were all here. You had a goal in mind. And where were we in 2010? Where are we in the fiscal year that we just completed last year? So first of all, total cost per pupil. In 2010, we spent $12,395 a kid. Okay, yeah, that's true. That's why you guys got on the board, was looking at things. At the same time, the districts most like us, this says 09, it's an error on my part, it should be 10. The districts most like us spent $10,800. So that's benchmarking. When we look at something and we see whether it's test scores or anything else, how are we doing relative to somebody else, or how are our own kids or our own buildings? We just benchmarked ourselves, thanks to the Ohio Department of Education, to districts that have similar types of operating demographics as us. And look in 2010, how much less. They were spending almost $2,000 a kid less than we were, okay? So if you remember, one of the first things we said was we're spending too much and we can't sustain it. And that was the start in 2010. Look where we are in 2016. We spend $12,343 a kid. In 6 years, we're actually spending 0.42% less than when we started. Now, how will we use that with the bond rating? That's fiscal discipline. Now, you can argue that, well, there were things that maybe you needed. Does this a touch one as well?
Yes.
Okay. And I shouldn't write on it either. Yeah. Probably best not to give me a marker when I'm up here.
I'm going to ask Christina, because she owns it.
Oh, I don't want to make Christina. So you could argue that, well, you were spending too much then. Well, we probably were, because we said we were spending too much and we need to get this back in alignment. So look at us today. Over 6 years, we're actually spending nearly 0.5% less than we did in 2010. Look at our benchmark group. They're now spending $12,039 a kid. They've had an 11.1% increase in total expenditures. That is financial discipline. We have been able to right size and get ourselves back into a more sustainable spending level. But there's a more important story that we're going to use with the rating industry folks when we go there, because this is the key to what he does and what you're asking to be done. And then and now, we've always done a fairly good job at it, but I want you to notice something. When you look at these other categories, the dollars spent on instruction and pupil support should be the biggest one, right? We certainly hope that it's not administrative. Once again, benchmarking. Back in 2010, when we spent $2,000 a kid more than the people most like us, the districts most like us, at the same time, we spent about $1,600 a kid on direct instructional services, classroom teachers, aides that are helping, guidance counselors too, to some of the pupil support piece, but direct instruction, not your salary, for example. Okay. So now, if you look at that, we spent $2,000 a kid more than the people most like us. We spent $1,600 of that $2,000 on instruction, but another $400 of it was being spent in other categories. So at the very least, you would have hoped as board members we tackled that $400 just to start, so that we wouldn't be spending more than others in those other categories as well. So look at where we are today. Our instructional expenses have actually gone up 2.67%, not per year, but over the 6 years. You had to. We didn't have the money to support the number of teachers that we had in 2010. Nobody wants to hear that, but that's the consequences of what we deal with sometimes. That's what keeps me awake at night, and even when you have to debate good policy, when you're spending money on something else, there's a consequence when you don't have enough. And if kids don't have everything they need in the classroom, then if we're doing other things, then that's problematic. In our case, we rank, and this will come out in the rating presentation, we're in the top 3% statewide in terms of percent of budget spent on direct instructional support for our kids. Top 3%, that's top 18 districts in Ohio. The bulk of our money goes, 76% goes to direct classroom support. Okay. Now these are things I watch and keep an eye on. And sometimes the people who work with me the most might think, I'm hearing more from him today than I've heard since 2009, possibly. But I sometimes don't appear to get down into the nitty-gritty and the details. But if you know what's going on at the top level, and you keep track also at the detail level, you get some really good information. And I'm proud of my work here, and that's going to come out during that rating presentation. I am proud of the people I work with here and the decisions that collectively you folks have made. My job is only to provide you data, and rarely have I spoken out and said, I really think that might be a dumb idea. I don't think I have.
Can you tell them why it's so important for the rating?
Well, yes, that's a good point. Farther up the chain of events here. The better that we are in our rating, you're an investor. The higher that a company says, hey, look, these guys they've got their act together. They're doing the job. The lower our interest rate. Your tax bill won't be as much.
It's like our credit rating.
It is our credit rating. So thank you for that. That is actually the start of the presentation. Now, if I was doing Roger's presentation, I would have given you the food first and then talk to you. So talk to you first. So since you've given me good advice, I'm passing that on. Look at what we did with morning operations from 2010 to 2016. Remember that $400 I talked about, kind of maybe connecting? We are down almost $250. We're down 11.86% over the 6-year period. What's building ops? That's custodial, that's maintenance, that's also transportation, believe it or not. We do have some when Peterman on our contracted. So over that 6-year period of time, there's been a real focus on it. Well, if we can't have any increases, then let's focus those increases on instruction. But we also know we're going to have to reduce there as well over time. Initially we did, and then we started building back. Let's get our building ops cut. We're now spending $400 less per kid to provide those non-instructional services in the districts most likely. That's good stuff. That's very good stuff. That's where you want to be. That's a sign of good management. That's a sign of good leadership, and quite frankly, a good board focused on the big picture. That's why these things happen. And so then and now is a great story to go into that ratings presentation a week from this Friday and be an advocate for our district to benefit from the best possible credit rating that we can get. Okay? Administrative, there's been a 0.5% change. It went from $1,256 a kid to $1,262. Look where we are. We are now $340 less than our benchmark group per kid on administration. Administration is just not him, her, and me. It's building secretaries. It's the technology, okay? So it's a lot bigger than, so even when you look at it, you go, my gosh, it's that much? Well, there's a lot more to it than that. It's the building principles. A lot of the things that you count on to keep kids safe are in that line item. I'm not trying to defend it. The benchmark speaks for itself. If I know as a board member, Scott, if I'm sitting here and the districts most like us spend $400 a kid more, $350 a kid more than we do on administration, that's probably no longer my target-rich environment. Maybe there's things to do. That doesn't mean we can't always do better. I always look at him for that part. But it's not where I'm going to go to immediately and say, oh my gosh, you got to figure out how to get $400 a kid out of this. We're always looking at what we can do with it. Staff support, professional development, those kind of things go in there. And we've actually gone down quite a bit, 12.5%, but you're doing a lot more in-house too and through yourself than hiring people to do that. Some of that will show up because of lower costs there. And we are about $50 a kid under, okay? That one little slide, when you know about the district and you have the history that the team you've put together, the longest, I think you're probably the closest to the nearest, the longest tenured superintendent.
After Mary Ronan, who's retired.
In
Four counties. Yeah, four counties.
That's what I'm excited about going to Chicago in about 10 days and making our case. How many administrators do we have today versus we're down about 2.5 administrators? Our like groups are actually up a little bit, about 1 administrator. So we've brought down the numbers. Salaries of administrators on average was $73,000 in 2010. It's $81 now. It's up about 11%. Some of that will happen if you have a lower cost one drop off, but that's over 6 years as well. At the same time, the districts most like us have increased salary or average salary of administrators by 12%. All right, so a lot there. And now you use that. We're going to be using this, quite frankly. And in fact, if you go to the PDF I sent you and go to page 40, just go up here and type down 40. Press enter.
I'm not used to typing on my laptop.
Okay. This is one of the slides we're going to use in the actual presentation. There's 51 slides in here that we'll be going over with the Moody's rating company. And this is one that talks about financial budgetary discipline. I practiced with you, to be honest with you. The slide I just did is what pours everything that I can look at that analyst and tell him about this district. Because I'm going to benchmark it to CPI, and we have seen that over the period, the average increase in expense has been 2.09. Ours is 0.3 average annual increase. Now this is total. What I showed you before was per pupil. So this is total budget has only changed on average 0.3% since 2009. They're going to like that. They're going to like what that tells them. We live within our means. We work hard to do that. Doesn't mean we're perfect. Doesn't mean we won't have debates about should we allocate dollars for one thing over another. A finite resource organization is always going to have that debate. The job, though, has to be leaning toward instruction, or we're not doing it for the right reason. I want to give you a little bit of sidebar. I'm going to detour here for just a moment because you need to be aware of this. Go to page 40.
This is
50, sorry. 30.
30.
Do I hear 20?
20. 18.
Well, really?
30. This is your TIF revenue. TIF revenue, what is it? I gotta tell you, I had no idea I was gonna get into this in 2009, or I would have asked you for more money. But when we started this, gonna help you out, but we have some really complex tax incentive agreements, and we've got a number of them now. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't keep track of it all by myself. I use legal counsel as much as I can, or need to, not can, I shouldn't say, to help with this. Because to be quite honest with you, we don't have a very cooperative partner with the city. Okay, that's no secret. And I'm going to share this with you. I contacted the city and I said, hey, I'm getting ready for this rating presentation. If you have any marketing material that you use with potential developers or investors in Norwood, would you send it to me? And he said, well, yeah, I can send that to you. So they sent it to me as a little made, because you can see the size of the attachment, and it was 1 page. The entire extent of the city's marketing approach is a 1-page explanation of how to get abatement. How not to pay taxes in Norwood. We have together, through a recession, remember this, and our stance has changed. We got very little development money back. We had very few. You had development agreements on the books that provided that you would only get 25 cents on the dollar. Okay? We negotiated our first big one with Norwood. In the middle of the recession, a guy willing to invest $100 million. And we got 55 cents on the dollar, and they're starting to show up. 2017, this year, your TIF payments will exceed $2 million, and they're going up from there. So now we have a double-edged sword here, because we have to explain to the ratings analysts why our values haven't grown, but yet we're getting revenue. So we got a little bit of a job ahead of us as we do that. So if I miss points next Friday, kick me under the table or something, because we have to make sure they understand that. And there was another reason why we had backdoor interest in the values not being on our books. We are now a formula district for the first time. What does that mean? If all of that valuation had got added to the books, the tax books for us, instead of this payment, we would still be on the guarantee with state funding. Meaning, if they reduce the guarantee, we would lose it. Meaning, the formula doesn't in any way generate near what we're getting per kid. So if we get 5,000 a kid, which we don't, when you add it to multiply that times the number of kids, it's well short of what we're actually getting today, because we've had loss of enrollment. Today, we're on the formula. Nearly $1 million in guarantee funding has been erased, and we're actually a working formula, which gives us, for a ratings analyst, that's a more stable environment now. Because the per pupil funding actually is working for us now. Part of the reason it's working, this represents about $70 million in valuation that's not on our tax books. So we knew what we were doing. We just didn't know when it would start showing up and when the difference would be made. And it's kind of just been accelerating here of recent, quite honestly, to the point that one of the things we'll tell the ratings analysts is, and you guys have backed it so far, and I certainly hope you will continue, and I believe you will. We are essentially saying we are a no incentive school district any longer. We did the not-for-profit at about 72%, a little different ballgame. But if you're coming to us with a development project, you pay the school district 100%. And you live on the rest. And we've already got a deal that's through on it, new terms. Okay? So think about that. That's also sending a message to the ratings analysts that we're looking at this stuff, that we're managing this as we go, and have our eye on the future. So we went from 25% totally out of our control to we're done. Recession's over. It's time to invest in Norwood and let it stand. And invest in our kids. And why does it matter? Every dollar of value, every dollar of tax, every dollar that comes in from this helps us to not ask you for the next levy until we absolutely have to. And that's important for Moody's to understand. We don't want to come back to you. And if these guys aren't paying, then we got to come back to you soon. Now, going back toward detail and back toward what I'm very proud of what we've done. I'm proud of a lot of what these guys have done. You're going to get a check register as part of the next board meeting. It's not in this one yet, it'll be in the next one. It's the next month. You're going to see on there for the first time a check made out to Ernie Strauser for $1,098. And if I were a board member, even though you know Ernie Strauser, I'd go, wonder what that's for. What I'm excited about is, it's kind of like, Wizard of Oz, you've always had the power. But we're going to re-educate you again tonight on Ohio Checkbook quickly. And also, though, something that I don't believe there's any other district in the state, and if there are, there's only 5 of them maybe, that's going to be able to do the second part that Laura shows you. Because when she gets done, you're going to know what that $1,098 is for. Okay? So let's talk about the check register. So as a board member, you get the benefit. If the public doesn't have this, they might call and say, I want a check register. Now they've got a check register, they know who the check was for, they know the amount, they know a check number. We have 2 additional resources that empower them, not to have to come and ask us, but to empower them. Yeah. So Ohio Checkbook is first, and we're going to give you 2 handouts, one for Ohio Checkbook again, and one for the on-base program.
There's no passes, right? Take one. The one, I will email these to you guys, that way you can just click on the link instead of having to type it all, and I'll email it to you tomorrow, because I want to make a change on this, on the one for on-base, but I'll show you that one. So this is the sheet that you're getting, and it's just a little 1-page, and it shows you, and I put the directions on here on how to log in and how to look it up, but if you just click on the link there, let's look. The Ohio Checkbook, anyone can just pull up this website. It's from the state of Ohio. I'm sorry, I'm not near as good of a speaker as you are. Let me wait for this to come up here. All right, so this is what you'll see when it comes up. And it's already on the tab for local government and schools. Sometimes it automatically comes up on the site. You just have to click on this one here. And you can either type in Norwood here, or you can go down, this way here. All the way down at the schools and just find Norwood and click on it. But these are all of the cities and schools that are on here.
So if you don't use it very often, there's multiple ways to get into it, which is really kind of helpful to the public.
So this is what we see. So we said before that we were looking up the check from Ernie. You wanted to know what it was for. So
Not from Ernie, to Ernie.
Oh, to Ernie. I want to know what it was for. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I misspoke. So since you have the check number, you can go, let's see. We can click right here, and you can click in type in Ernie's name, and this check will come up.
And by the way, that's researching all checks to date, isn't it, that we have?
Yes, that's the last.
So it's not like
Go
it's
back
just,
to the reset.
it's not looking at just,
It goes back to 2012.
so.
So you can look for any check from 2012 to, we're usually uploading every other week or so. So there might be a little bit of a lag, but we try to get it in there as quickly as possible.
So these aren't payroll checks, these are just
No,
checks about.
when you see the check register, that's to actual vendors.
Got it.
And that's why I wanted to use this example, because you don't see my name on that report.
When you go, then you can view the check details. All I did was highlight the check here, and view the check details. And then it comes up, and it doesn't give a whole lot extra information, but it does show you the check number and the account that it came out of.
And see, this is what, while I like this program and we embraced it, and Heather and Laura got on this themselves. Heather did a lot of the work, most of the work probably you'd say, but you worked on this. This is where it's short, because now, even as a board member, you're still going, maybe I ought to just call Rob and see why aren't you writing himself a check or whatever, because this doesn't tell me anything. See, and that's not empowering people, but it's a start. I'm not critical of it. What we're going to show you next, though, is empowerment, and it's also Well, I'll wait on that. Good.
Well, if you're if you're a member of the public, you can click on this button here, questions about this payment, and you put your contact information in here and your message and click send, and it comes directly to us. So we can then answer your question that way. But since you're board members, we have,
Or when I do that, you answer back, none of your business.
Because of it.
I stay out of that side of
but
the.
as board members, we have set up an account for you on Base. This is the second sheet that you have there. So there's the link here. And your username is NORWBOARD. And the password is all lowercase letters, Norwood CS.
Norwood City Schools.
Yes.
And we don't mind this being on the, we don't care if you give this to people,
Mm-hmm.
because quite honestly, it's all public information.
Yes. I would suggest clicking this little HTML button here. It'll be easier for you to view. Otherwise, if you can leave it on this ActiveX, but it's going to download all sorts of other pop-up type of programs on here. But the HTML, it just comes up a little bit better on the screen. So when you pull this up, you're going to see all the document types that you can look for. And since you have the check number here, we just click on this board check here. And the check number, let's see, 216916. And click the binoculars. These are supposed to be binoculars. It doesn't really look like binoculars. When I first saw that I had to click on binoculars, I was looking all over the page for it. I was like, binoculars, but there it is down there. And then the actual copy of the check comes up. So, which this does say the invoice number, we put it in as, reimbursement for airfare. But if you click on this document button here, you can pull up the cross references. Let me wait for this to come up. And here you can get a copy of the requisition form, the purchase order, and the actual invoice that was sent in for the payment. So here's the email that Ernie sent for us for the reimbursement. But it has all of the information on here.
Just go ahead and start at the email, because this is the level.
Okay.
Go up and hit and start at the top. This is the level that we are virtually paperless in our office now. If you go in there, not only has Rob taken all of our square footage, and we have very little. I don't know if you know it or not. I don't have a desk anymore. Okay. Man won't even give me.
He doesn't.
So I have to come in and I just hover, and I look for a place to sit.
You come over and eat candy first.
That's right. I do usually check. But I'm kidding. Actually, I don't have a desk. I'm not kidding about that part. But that's fine. I've got a table. We are so paperless that the auditors on the conversion school, for example, they don't have to come in for this stuff. We've been doing this for a while. And they can see, for example, we're not hiding anything here. In order to get tickets booked to Chicago for Rob and me, I made the reservations on my credit card this evening. The amount and confirmation is below. When you have time, will you do a requisition? And I didn't know I was going to do this at the time. This all kind of just folded into a presentation. Start the process to reimburse me. We can pay for this out of the debt service fund, the issuance cost. I use this shuttle service because they can get us in and out in one day, thus saving hotel costs, overnight meals, a lot of time out of district, plus my added hours bill. Now, as a board member, if you were asked for some reason, I'm not saying you would be asked this question, I want you to be able to do that. And if you have to call me, that's okay too. That's fine. But that's the level that we actually do operate at. We really do, even though you don't see it every day and get that opportunity. We want people to know, and we want full transparency. And yes, we could have flown out of Cincinnati for less cost, but not when time and everything in hotel rooms, and I'm not rooming with him, and are all out of see. So we're in and out in one day, and we're going to take care of business. Now, the funny part of that story that's not in the email is that, of course, he had no idea about the shuttle over at Lumpkin. And so he goes to Heather's trying to find out what kind of plane I got him on. So he doesn't know that it's a single engine,
It's
3
amazing.
passenger job, but it's worked before.
Is that why we were told we have to sit on opposite sides of the car?
Yes, we got a balance difference. Scott and
We're
Bill.
both in the back. We're not like this the whole
We're gonna
way.
balance out the front. But as you go down through there, you'll see the London receipt and all of those kind of things that are in there as well. And so it was an opportunity for you. I want you to also think about for just a second. I mean, you can probably already pick up on it. I feel so confident in what we do that sometimes, Scott, I can even be on the defensive that you might have got a little taste of, just a little, because we work very hard to do this for you and to operate at this level. And so whether it's a rating analyst that we will be an advocacy for you, or somebody that asks you any question at any time, you can answer it for yourself when you're ready. You can always point them to us and we'll answer it. And we'll always share with you information. Okay? And that was the gist of what I wanted to tell you tonight. Anything to add, Laura?
No, I think that's it.
All right. And I think for finishing food, we did or following food, we did pretty well. All right.
I think they're going after us too.
Right.
All right.
Out of curiosity, is there this similar system for like salaries? Because those are all public information as well.
I have a little bit more challenge, and I have not put energy into that yet. There are elements of a public employee's information that actually is still confidential. But I have already been thinking about how can we get the ability for them to go in. Like, in fact, Laura and I had that conversation with our new ITC today. We can add components to this, not checkbook, but to our on-base, our own local program, that will enable people to do that. And I will tell you that by the time we get to this end of this fiscal year, we'll have something on payroll there. Now, for example, Scott asked me, here's where we are still yoked with state software. There's two important things to remember. It works, but it's really cheap. And typically when you buy anything that works that's really cheap, it doesn't work really, really well. And so when you ask me something, for example, Ernie, I want to know your salary history for the last 8 years. Believe it or not, I can get you 1 year at a time, but getting you that side-by-side comparison is manual work. And that's why I haven't quite framed what I want to do with payroll yet. But we'll have something on there.
It is on the Ohio checkbook, it just doesn't have anybody's specific name.
No, and that's not going to give you enough. It's just going to tell you that we wrote a check for payroll this month, or for this pay for $380,000 or whatever. It's not going to give you the detail part. But we want that, and we will have that in place. Okay? But for example, what you're not entitled to get is if an employee's in a certain annuity or buys cancer insurance and stuff like that. And that, I know that they don't, but the problem is for us, breaking it out of state software and then getting it into this format efficiently is a little bit tough. But we're going to get there. And we've already been talking kind of, again, serving multiple purpose. That's where that whole, what's in the back of my mind with that whole payroll report that we even asked Swoka about today. Good question. Anything else? Well, thank you for letting us practice and also to hopefully give you some useful information. Laura, thanks for staying tonight and helping out.
I mean, I'm a little surprised you didn't read through the whole 72-page document. Normally you operate.
I would love to. I actually would.
There you go, Ernie.
I'm already excited about it.
And when do you guys go to Chicago?
I would love to do 2 months.
What?
Next
I
Friday?
would love 2 months.
17th. We're going over it.
St.
You will
Patrick's Day.
love the Ultimate Air Shuttle. You will feel like a rock star.
Oh, don't tell him that.
Okay, son, you will feel like a rock star.
He's telling me that you can roll the windows down when you're up in the air. And
We're just hoping they put fuel in it this time.
Except for the vibrations,
Yeah.
the dropping.
I'm not a big fan of flying.
Right.
And
No, Heather said you came over and said, "Hey, I don't know anything about this plane business."
how big is this plane? Because it's really small.
It's booking us on.
I went back and tried, yeah. Don't even tell one story.
You will be good.
Not a fan. No. Any other questions for him? Okay. Well, next up, I'll have Roger and introduce this wonderful team that's with us. And, you know, as we spoke, we started out an executive session about a month ago. We had some discussion, and we said, well, let's bring Roger in. I wasn't fully aware he was going to feed us, which I appreciate, Roger. Do you have samples of your award-winning barbecue sauce, or is it more of a hot sauce?
You don't get this.
Indian Farmer's barbecue sauce, and he didn't tell me today that was one that he won a national award with. and it has cherries in it. And it's addictive because the first time you taste it, you're like, that's unique. Then the second time, like, that's pretty good. The third time, you're covering your scrambled eggs with it. And so it's one of those. But Rod's going to give, the board had developed kind of a list of some questions that they had, and I sent those to Roger, and Roger's prepared to walk through all those things. So I'll turn the floor over to you, Roger.
Thank you. First of all, it was not national. I hate to correct you, but I can't take credit for a national award, but it was a little local Madison, Indiana contest.
Oh, well, then I don't like the sauce anymore. I thought it was.
First of all, how was the food?
It's good.
No, be honest. How was the food?
It's really good.
I mean, is it something that you guys might even think that you may have served your own children or your own families in your own homes? Potentially.
Not the Brussels sprouts.
Not the Brussels sprouts.
I would say yes on the Brussels sprouts. I liked the pot pie. I don't think my
The
boys
pot
would
pie.
like it. Yeah.
This is an example of the food, some of the foods that we do offer to our students on a monthly, weekly.
Each of these items are once per week.
Roger,
So this is
introduce your
like
team.
I would do
because I know
that.
everybody.
So of course, Liz Ziller, our school nutrition, RDLD, our school nutrition manager, and then we have Victoria, who is our newest UC dietetic intern, but more importantly, a Norwood resident as well. She's our first intern that's a Norwood resident, which is kind of interesting, as many as we've had. But so she did a lot of the grunt work for the food that we have today, and coming over here and cooking it so that the smells would actually be in this room even long after we're gone. When we cook these types of foods in these schools, the schools smell like this. Today you guys got a whole mix of things because we did a variation of different items. But when we roast turkeys overnight in the high school, you smell them in the middle school. I mean, those flavors, aromas just kind of waft through the entire school through the ventilation systems. So that's pretty impressive. I think it's important with food that people get hungry by smelling it when they come in. It is interesting the number of students that have come in and said, "What's on fire?" or "What's burning?" You know, they're not used to smelling. Many of our students aren't used to smelling food cooking. So sometimes the roasted vegetables and the things that we actually do prepare in the ovens are new odors to them, and we respect that as well. As Rob mentioned, there were a couple questions, I guess, that came across. They were not very detailed questions, somewhat vague. One was, I guess, what is this current state of food services? Well, I can look into that in many ways, and I'm going to steal something from Ernie here and play a then and now game as well. This is my 7th school year. It's amazing how time has flown. It feels like I was just doing this for the first time yesterday, answering questions on how I could expect to get rid of the snack shack and the French fries and still balance our bottom line. And yet we've done that. I don't recall the exact numbers. It was prior to me, but I believe that in some years they were to the tune of almost $250,000
Pretty close.
that was being transferred over to food services, and we don't have that issue any longer. We don't always have great years. We have years that we struggle a little bit more. We seem to have this curve when it comes to our finances. Really good year, not as good year. Really good year, not as good year. I'm trying to pinpoint exactly what causes that. There's a lot of things that cause it. We've had a lot of changes. You guys see it. We went from French fries in a snack shack and a la carte to 0 a la carte, scratch cook, reimbursable meals. What is the state of our current state of food services? You know, I had a belief coming in, a philosophy coming into schools that we as a nation, and this is not political, there are a lot of people that do what I do that get way too political. We have a nation that is suffering medically. We have health issues across the board. Every one of us knows it. Turn on any channel, watch any news report, pick up any news media in any way, go to any doctor's office and listen to the stuff that they've got on the TV, and you will hear about these problems. Increased childhood obesity, cardiac issues, allergies, ADHD, ADD, am I missing any?
Diabetes.
Diabetes.
Even cancer.
You know, at younger and younger
Yeah.
ages. And I know we've said this before, but they're predicting that this new generation of children to not live as long as we are going to live. To me, personally, bipartisan, whatever, we need to try and fix that. My biggest belief is that we are in education. That's what we do. We are not chefs, we're not dietitians, we're educators. We are put here to serve the needs, the educational needs of our students, period. When kids come into school, they don't want to do multiplication tables. They don't want to read. They don't want to study about history. They may not want to do science. It's our jobs as teachers, as educators, to explain why that's important, to teach them how it's fun, to teach them where in the future they may utilize that knowledge. The same has to be done when it comes to nutrition and how to eat. Far too many people have, and too many generations, have gone through just being fed whatever, to the point where we now have very sick people. So for me, we need to go in as teachers and teach students how to eat properly. You don't like Brussels sprouts? Tell me why. What is it you don't like about them? Yeah? I promise you that you've had Brussels sprouts cooked very differently, seasoned very differently than we have, that taste completely different. Give it a chance. If you still don't like it, that's okay. We offer variety. That's part of what we try to do. So for us, the current state of food services is we still are operating as a self-sufficient business within the schools. But more importantly, we now are in classrooms on a regular basis, or we are bringing classrooms to our cafeterias at all grade levels, from preschool all the way up through the seniors. We have a life skills class that's doing essentially a home ec course every Wednesday, where they come in the cafeteria and they've done some on-hands cooking. They learn how to fry an egg, which is kind of fun, over gas, and we didn't catch any of them on fire, which is also exciting. I did have a fire extinguisher close by just in case. We've gone into I go into the business class and I talk about what we do as a business, our career choices. We go into elementary, preschool classes and on up, and we do the 2-Bite Club. We do sampling and gym classes of different foods. We help with that. We do garden lessons. We've been in Spanish class. We've been in basic math class at the high school. We have become part of the educational process. We are no longer Norwood Food Services. We are Norwood Nutrition Services. We provide overall nutrition services and advice and help to everybody in our school district, not just the kids. We help a lot of our adults as well who reach out to us. Mostly Liz, because that's her thing. Then we didn't have an RDLD. We didn't have people that could do that. Now we do. So I kind of wanted to do the then and now game. There are some specific topics that I thought that we should spend a few minutes talking on. Financially, I already kind of talked about how we kind of do this a little bit. This year is what I would call one of our more challenging years. Each year we are doing more and more scratch cooking. We are introducing foods to kids that they may not necessarily be familiar with. Our participation rates have not dropped to the floors like they have in a lot of schools that all of a sudden had to follow the National School Lunch Program. We have maintained about 58%. We'll get to that. This year we are predicting, if things continue the way that they have, to finish in the black by just a few $1,000s. It's not going to be a year where we bring $30,000, $35,000, $37,000 to the bottom line to reinvest in capital equipment or capital expenses. But we do expect to finish in the black. Why? Well, before we get into the whys of that, let's also discuss a little bit about our free and reduced program. This is our first year of the online application, all right? So instead of it having to be all filled out on paper and We mail it to families, they forget it, we send it home with kids, it left in the backpack, they finish it out, they send it in with their child, the child loses it, the dog eats it, who knows whatever happens. Now it's online, once they hit send, it's automatically transferred over to my computer, and we get it uploaded within a day's time. That has worked wonderfully. Not only does it work because families can go online and do it, if they don't understand that, if they don't have access to a computer, if they're not very computer savvy, if any of the above, they can come into the office, and Liz and I, or any of our school secretaries, will sit down with them and help them do that. Or they can call Liz or I, and we will do it for them over the phone. We can complete it out for them. We read all of it to them very clearly. We've even worked with some of our Spanish-speaking teachers to help us reach out to some of the families. Actually, she ended up speaking to a French-speaking family because she speaks French as well, to try and capture some of the people that we have language barrier issues with. This is a much easier way of capturing the free and reduced people. We are capturing more than we did last year. There are still some that qualified for the program last year, but we don't have an application from them yet. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we've done to try and get that captured. That number is smaller than it was last year, but it's still a number that exists. All that being said, our overall district free and reduced percentage has gone up 2%. So we're at 67% currently as of today. Last year, this time, we were at 65%. That's with Williams Avenue continuing to drop. Williams is just, you guys know better than I do. There's a lot of growth in Norwood, and the growth is in this area. And there's money coming in, families that have more money, and I think those families just flat out don't qualify for the program. And we're seeing more kids pack in that school as well. Again, we have more families who are mother-father families. Both figures are in the home. They're putting more interest into that. So we're seeing some things change here at Williams. All other elementaries are at 73%, which is up. Middle school is at 72%, which is up. High school maintains right around 58%, and we've discussed in the past some of the reasons why that is. When I was that age, I got a job, paid for my own stuff, that kind of thing, and whatnot. I think we also see a lot of turnover at the high school age. I might be wrong on that, but curriculum or enrollment-wise, are those the kids that seem to be more transient, the older ones? Or is it pretty balanced? Yeah.
It's pretty balanced.
It's pretty balanced across the district.
So we are seeing more of those applications come in. With the families who qualified last year but haven't qualified or have not even filled out the paperwork this year, we put an emphasis in our department. We have interns. We have 2 interns just about every day of the school year. We'll have 18 interns at the end of this school year. We utilize the intern program much more so than any other school district. And we teach them a lot more than a lot of other schools do as well, because we're small enough that Liz and I do everything. So it's not, there's a person that handles free and reduced, there's a person that handles amenity, there's a person that handles that. So when you intern here, you get to do everything. They also get to make calls on top of Liz and I making calls. And we will give them a list of families, and they will call those families, and they will say, hey, look, our first initial question, our first initial discussion with every one of those families is, we have not received a free and reduced meals application from your family yet. We noted that you qualified for the program last year. We need to get that completed. That is our first approach to try and get that done. We can do that with you over the phone right now. We can help you through it, however you want to take it. All right? That's our first thing. Our secondary discussion is that of negative debt. All right? With the negative debt, we continue to send notes home in the hands of the children, mail letters home from our office, mail letters home to the high offenders from Rob's office with his signature on them, make phone calls from our office as well as from each individual school. We send big offender lists to the principals in hopes that the principals can help us get some of that debt back. All that said, all that effort being put into it, and I am more proud this year of the fact that we have done a better job of that than we've done in previous years, but it still continues to grow. There is still a contingency out there that don't answer their phone calls from the school, that don't return our calls, that say that they're going to do it and never do it. And there's just some that just flat out refuse. Some of that 80, 90 kids who qualified last year that don't qualify this year probably have seen the fact that they no longer qualify. A lot of them were reduced, but error prone. Error prone is when they're right on the bubble income. You know, you get a little bit of a raise, you may no longer qualify. If there are circumstances that we're not aware of, that a principal or a social worker or a counselor is aware of, they can bring that to my attention and we can get those filled out per administration, and we have a few of those as well. So the negative debt has grown to a combined total of about $53,000. That's not just 1 year, that's
No, that's
multiple
cumulative,
years.
right?
That is
That's what it
cumulative,
here.
multiple years.
What's our debt for this year?
For just this year, we're probably at around 18, 16.
And once they fill out the paperwork, it's not retroactive, right?
No, it
It
is
starts
not.
at the minute.
I'm allowed to go back to the state and get reimbursement for up to the first 30 days. Up to the first 30 days, that's what we do. One of the things that I have, you know, we're never going to use a collection agency. But I know that if we were to use a collection agency, they would charge us a fee. And that fee is normally in the area of about 50% of what you're trying to collect. So what I've done is I've made the decision, and Ernie can smack me around if he wants for this, but I have called those families that qualified last year, that don't qualify this year, and I've said, look, fill out the application. If you qualify for the program, we will reduce what you owe us by 50%. So we've tried to motivate them by giving them a financial push, and it's
No,
worked.
I'm confused by that, because we had a direct meeting where I said we would have full write-off of the debt for free and reduced. So smack me around, no. I'm just the opposite. If we can help the kid and get the free and reduced, and they get back on board with the free and reduced application and forget the debt, you're never going to get it anyway. We didn't ask you, so for any smacking around, you smack me around for that. So no, I'm confused on that. I'm going to correct that now on the fly. You may have left there with that understanding. There was no talk of 50. There was talk about even including it as revenue so it would count towards your bonus. So, and there'll probably be emails to back that up, but that is what was said and how it was done.
Well, then that's my misunderstanding. I never understood it. I understood that we were going to correct it last year, but we didn't get all those people last year. And we're not going to catch all those people. And there was no money transferred last year for the negative balance, so we just made the effort to try and get what we can this year. Now, yeah, you're right. We're probably never going to get the money. We're going to end up eating it eventually. So, my mistake for misunderstanding it, I guess. So, that's, before we move from there, are there any questions or any other questions on the negative debt or on our efforts to try and get people to pay that negative debt? All right. So,
Let me ask one quick question. What's the mechanism that you have in place that, I mean, how far down the road do they not pay before you, you know what I'm trying to say?
at what point do we start calling families?
Yeah, what mechanism tells you, hey,
Well,
you know, or, and then what happens? Are they
we,
cut off, or is it,
No.
how's that work?
all right, so the NutriKids program, our POS system, is set up to where I can set a dollar amount, $0, $10, $20. That dollar amount was set at $20, where a student can go up to $20 in debt before it locks them out of the system. When it gets locked out of the system, my register person gives me a list of those numbers. We increase that student's debt They get added to a list for us to make calls to.
You say it increases their.
We can go into the system and I can
Move that. And you just
it's a credit limit. I can increase your credit limit. And we increase credit limits at $20 a time. So whenever that number, somebody calls us up and says, we have numbers for you, we know what that means. It means that you are in the negative. So we go ahead and increase your credit limit, add your meal for the day so that we're still being reimbursed by the state for the whatever you are qualified for. And then $20 gets added to your credit limit.
How often does that?
On some kids,
Yeah.
as quickly as they go through $20. And we don't allow them to charge anything extra. They're only allowed, when they're charging a meal, they're only allowed to get a reimbursable meal, one. We don't let them have 2 meals, we don't let them buy extra stuff, it's 1 meal. And we don't turn any child away. We attempted to do an emergency meal at the high school. Mr. Winterrod and I played with that, and it didn't work. The kids stopped eating. They just stopped eating. And there are some people that might believe that that's an okay thing, but it's not something that I want to get into. I don't want to punish kids for things that aren't necessarily their issues. We have had a lot of kids who are taking their lunch money and going across the street and spending their lunch money at the end of the day, and mom calls and says, how can my kid owe $60? I give them this much money every day. And we print out an entire transaction report for the entire year, we talk about it, and they find that out. That's what they did. So it's interesting when you find those, but they're rare. So that's how the system works. We increase the debt, and we can do that on an individual basis. Everybody starts at $20. We can set that in as a parameter for the system. And I can put that number at whatever I want, but we like to keep it at 20 so that we are constantly made aware of who needs to do it. On any given day, we're increasing 10 to 20 accounts.
Across the district?
Yes.
And most of the time, those end up being kids that are on free and reduced.
No, most of the time there are families who have not completed the free and reduced meals application.
See, therein lies,
But chances are, even though they don't complete the application, they could not qualify.
They may not qualify.
They may be able to afford to pay.
They may qualify. They may only qualify for reduced. They may not qualify at all for the program, and who knows what the situation is. There may be extenuating circumstances that we're not aware of that, and we're incredibly empathetic and sympathetic to the people in our schools. We don't call people up browbeating them. We don't call them up threatening them that we're not going to feed their child. We work with everybody. We work with them on payment plans. We work with them on discounting the account if we need to. We're doing what we feel we can do to help get them fed.
How do similar districts manage what we're talking?
Emergency meal, we're not feeding the child in many cases.
or the debt goes up,
Or the debt continues to climb
just
up.
as a sample.
It is it's become a national problem. Many school districts are experiencing the same issue.
Statistically, to go with what you're saying, and I made this point a year ago on economic disadvantage, which helped us find some errors in economic disadvantage. I appreciate what's going on at Williams, but community demographics do not change in 1 year. 7 out of 10 of our kids are poor. Sorry. You're not gonna, it's not going to be 6 out of 10 next year. It's just not going to happen that fast. The challenge that we have, for example, when you get an application, the question I have is, who makes the determination? The income level is presented to you, correct or not? So you make the determination whether they qualify or not.
The person fills out the application, gives me their income information.
Okay.
And they give it to me verbally or they just write it down. We're not asked to prove any of that. We do a verification for percentages too.
Sure.
The numbers are set by the federal government.
So we have, a lot of times cultures will look at the data and let it kind of just become a compliance mode where we got it all done. And I'm not glad we're up 2%, but if we are genuinely up 2%, last year was down and shouldn't have been, to be honest with you. That's part of what drove some of the conversation that we had. But if we have 77 applications for a kid who left here last year and was on free and reduced lunch, and that family income was sent in at 24 and you qualify at 44 and under, we better work really hard to get that. Focus on the 77 and focus on the kid. There's data there that will help us to do that, and I'm sure these guys are doing that, but it's March now, and it's hard. And I even had the conversation with Kimberly that, and this isn't on Kimberly, they've also got a lot of data themselves too, that how do we get this harnessed in October? Because from my opinion, and again, you can smack me around, having a discussion about the delinquency until we have an honest discussion about free and reduced and making sure that we have every kid that can get it, getting it, you're talking about, I think the last time I did gross revenue, it was less than 20% of gross revenues coming from paying kids. Now, it doesn't mean they aren't contributing to the delinquency, but we've got to dig into those 77 and those 80, and that's on us as a business. And we have a lot of indicators back in September and October, and by the end of October, certainly, that the 30 days are up, and we can't use the grace period any longer. And this kid was on it last year, and his income was only half of what it takes to qualify. Unlikely, you guys live here, Tim, that they got a brand new job and they doubled their income. Now, we may never get the application from them, but back in October, you use that data then, you're smart about how you use it, and you know strategically. Listen, if their income was 43.4 and it's 44 to qualify, don't go after them first. But of the 77, there's kids on there that don't need to be harassed about a letter about not paying. Most of the friends, this is judgmental, and friends in your circle who are getting that letter, pay the bill.
I'm surprised I haven't gotten a letter.
Exactly.
I think you need to look me up.
But there's very much in the minority.
Right.
Okay? And this is the frustrating part for me. Some of it is, as I mentioned earlier, that we don't have user-friendly data systems in government. But we do have some things when we get down and focus on this that can help steer us earlier in the process to getting those applications. And to be able to say to you, there's 77. When we break this out, X% we're so close to being off of it last year anyway, we didn't even bother, because if they just got a 3% raise, they're off. Then there's this group, and then there's this group. Work from the bottom up. But it's got to be done earlier.
That 77 was over 100 at the beginning of the school year.
Great.
Within that first 30 days, we targeted those families. We called those families and said, hey, we have an online process. This is how it's going to work this year. We can help you get it done. And we have captured a great deal of them to bring that number down.
Good.
That number of 77, which is actually a little bit more than that now, as of today, has been divided down per school. And the list for the high school has been handed to Mr. Winterrod. The list for the middle schools actually been given to Mr. Stacy, and so forth and so on, to see if we can't get help from the individual principals, because principals sometimes are in communication with those families a lot more than we are, because our efforts just aren't getting it done. Not because we're not making the effort, because it's just not working for some reason. So we're trying a whole another level. We're doing everything we can to try and get it. Believe me, it's more money. It's more money that we're going to get from the state. It makes us doing our job a lot easier if we can capture every one of those.
I hate to be devil's, maybe not. I was
Really?
I know. Okay, I'm gonna do what I always do. I can't help but to think that, we're allowing, in whatever manner we do, our parents, as a result of giving meals to the kids who should be on free and reduced because their parents didn't fill out the form, we're allowing, there's no consequence for that child. They don't care. They're still going to feed them. We're going to feed them.
Right.
They're gonna come in and we're gonna give them a meal and they're gonna drive the price up. And yeah, they might get bugged a few times on phone calls or ignore them or a couple letters. But guess what? There are no consequences for not doing it. We have no consequences.
That's right.
How do you fix that problem without consequences?
Well, here, I'm going to just opine on that quickly because you know that I'm not the warm and fuzzy guy, generally speaking. But looking at a second grader who doesn't have a choice in this, it's tough. It's not the general business model to be able to look at it and say, sorry, honey, here's your cheese sandwich. And I wrestled with that for 20 years of my career now. And have been not the cook in my case is all they could have mustered for me, but I have been very involved at running at that level, and in a district that wasn't as poor as this one in terms of parent poverty. So I'm just going to give you my personal experience. That Rob and others are going to have a viewpoint on that, but you know, at the end of the day, if the kid's dealing both with the stigma of the cheese sandwich or whatever it may be, and still hungry, you got to educate him. And you've got to educate them. And it's tough, Sherry. It's so doggone tough. There's not an easy button.
You know, the ultimate consequence typically doesn't kick in until however many years later, until we're getting close to commencement. And that year we're saying, here's how much you owe. And here's what I'm going to tell you. A high percentage of our kids who owe a significant amount that's going to stop them from walking to commencement exercises. You know who often pays those bills? Teachers, employees, we ante up. Because back in the old days, it used to be we're going to hold your report card.
Yeah.
If you have a progress bug, what do you need to pay for a report card? I mean, we're going to be someday soon not doing paper report cards, except we do have a percentage of our population that, when we survey them, they don't have internet. They're not counting this dude. Or they can park in front of our school, pull off internet, or somebody's house, or just regular Wi-Fi. So
That's what you do.
it used to be at the end of the quarter, we're going to hold your report card, and right on the report card, you owe $12.47 and library book overdues and lunch. But hold a report card, okay, I'll just look at the progress book. And then we don't want to block the progress book access because we beat parents over the head to get on the progress book so you know what your kiddo's doing. And so there's kind of a double-edged sword. So often, if it's a third grader, we may not catch up on some of those things. The big fines that hit a kid months before graduation is athletic fines, fees because they didn't turn in a jersey, they didn't turn in a baseball bat, 5 pads, basketball shorts, whatever, and food service. We don't have a big lost library book issue, and I will tell you, I was kind of under the belief up until a couple years ago that kids aren't checking on books anymore. Well, they're not checking a bunch out at the high school, but we are breaking the record every year at the elementaries of books being checked out. So, but they're being brought back, and that's awesome. But yeah, the old forever until progress book, it was, all right, we got 62 report cards to hold in the office and you're sending the letters home and making the calls and, you know, just go around the door and get my kids on progress book.
And I just think that we can't, the problem's never going to be fixed. I mean, it won't be because there are no consequences. And I understand from your standpoint, standing there and saying, here's your cheese.
I'd love to bring the parent
Back
in.
in my day was peanut butter. But
Government peanut butter.
I've been
with honey and butter mixed
I
in.
have to tell you, in my early days, my kids were on free and reduced, okay? And I was scrambling in, my penny jar to count out pennies so they had enough money to pay for lunch. And I just feel like we have parents.
I agree. And I was getting ready to tell you, I wish every kid had a cherry.
No, I mean, but I don't think unless you force them to be like a cherry, they're not going to do it. They're going to go buy their pack of cigarettes instead of giving their kid lunch money because the school's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Because that's okay. The taxpayers, somebody else will pick them up.
Yeah.
The teachers will get together and we'll let them walk at graduation.
Yeah.
It's going to be that way until we say, "Daggone it, there are consequences."
I wish the kids weren't the victims because I hear you. I agree. People need to be
But they have to be.
responsible, but I know many circumstances where the mom is strung out with drugs and is not even close to being in the right mind, and the kid is ultimately suffering, and that is what gets me. Like, I can't have a kid. I said it earlier. Like, I will never accept money being a consequence for an opportunity. Like, that should never even factor for the little kids. And I know we're not a charity and we shouldn't act that way, but at the same time,
It just
We
seems
are.
like we're a needle in the problem. As a world, I mean, it's not just here.
We are.
As a world, we
It's
enable.
global.
That we fix, we cover, we take care of.
Well, let's
And
look at the
until we make
debt.
those people responsible, and takes kids being embarrassed. I mean, there were one day, my kids were embarrassed. And, they would come home and get mad at me and say, no, we're not gonna do free and reduced. You fill out the form differently so that we don't even wanna be on it. And we scrambled in the penny jars so that they didn't have to be on it. And,
I worked in the school cafeteria.
yeah.
In elementary school.
Come on,
That's how you got free lunch.
yeah.
Seriously. I mean, that's
I
what.
know that.
Well, they didn't tell you. But let's come back to, there's parts of this that that I'm 100% aligned with the things you're saying, but it's harder here. And even Roger, to some degree, when he made the transition from private sector, has had to deal with a lot of different things here that you wouldn't put up with in private sector.
Right.
In terms of,
And I'm less fuzzy than you.
in terms of, and we've had that conversation in terms of even employee expectations. Okay, but we've got to. In my opinion, and I've done a lot of talking tonight, which is unusual. Really, it is. These guys won't believe it, but you guys know it. We've got a delinquency issue. The cumulative part does not concern me as much as what we're doing going forward. If we look and dissect this year's amount of debt, there's an element of it that our parents that either just didn't get the memo, didn't pay attention to the memo long enough. I don't believe there's too much lack of notification, in my opinion, and I saw the emails. But okay, maybe we can do even better there. We're going to have a certain number of kids. This is the one that grieves me. That program is in place. I used to call it meal plan assistance. I wouldn't even call it free and reduced lunch. Provided by the United States Department of Agriculture, which at the time was true. I don't know who's paying for it today, if it still is or not. We've got a certain number of those kids who, for me, the passion is, have we absolutely made sure that they're getting the benefits they're entitled to? And then we've got a group that you're not going to make that change until they can't walk or whatever it may be. But in terms of percentage of sales, our true business sales are such a small part of this operation. It's all government funded, right down to the commodities that we get, which arguably can be said, well, we get commodities at a discount to help kids and have a lower cost lunch. So dissect the debt. We've got the cloud of what's been happening. That gets taken care of if they get to, let's just hope they get to walk or get to the place where they have to ask. Because we lose too many kids before they get there, that they get to walk and deal with that issue there by whatever means that we end up paying for it. But in between, we're not, in my opinion, ratcheted up just yet enough in terms of capturing. The kid had an application last year. We need to know it earlier, and we need triage here. Because by the time, it's like any good building principal will tell you, if you want to tell me to shut up, go ahead.
Keep rolling, you're rolling.
You start the culture of the building on day one, not in March. And so what are we learning? How are we going to do it differently next year? I appreciate that Roger said, look, the resources we're using is not getting the results. That's just being very candid, and I would expect him to say that because quite honestly, he doesn't have, this is social worker level work, which Christina, we're not overstaffed on that, are we?
No.
That's what you're talking about.
Right.
Get the kid the benefit, get it over with, if there's a chance they're coming back to school, do it in July.
And the bulk of that money is not, if we have 2,000 kids in our enrollment, it's not every family. The bulk of that $53,000 is in a small number. It's within 100.
Yeah, that's true.
Kids.
And you did do a good job analyzing that.
And we have our first situation where we have a child, an individual child who is hitting the $1,000 threshold now. And we have no means of tracking it further. We have to actually put a note in because the program does not allow for 4 figures.
What grade are they in?
I think they're 10th or 11th grade.
So they got some time still. There's also There's a number of students that are transient that come here and never fill out the paperwork and charge lunch for a year and then disappear.
I was going to ask,
We
does
lose
the
that as
paperwork come with the student or no? If they
No.
come into it, so they have to start over? No.
We used to have a significant debt problem in preschool. We'll take it from there.
Well, I'd be more than happy to offer, I mean, not that I have any type of, end-all cure-all, but I know over the last 2 years, the 2-year debt we had in preschool, we had racked up over $46,000. And so this year, that was, besides just learning what was going on, the number one goal was to not let that happen. And thus far, I've had to withdraw one student. And it goes back to kind of what you were saying. I can't tell you how many parents at the beginning of the year, because September they had their registration fee covered September. And in October when they started getting letters for non-payment, they were like, well, so-and-so told me that if I don't pay, nothing happened. That wasn't their exact words, but that was where they were at. If I just keep sending my kid, nothing happens. And it's just like expectations in the classroom, very quickly once the kids figure out, or in this case, it's the adult kids, figure out that, you have to pay. I mean, this isn't free. I mean,
Right.
And the tuition doesn't come even near covering the teachers and the aides and the food and everything else that goes into it. But I see both sides of it. You have a second grader standing there saying, I'm hungry. But a lot of it is the parents, where all of a sudden the kid doesn't get to keep eating all the time for free. I don't know that I can offer anything, but I'd be more than happy to help,
I'm more than happy to listen
you
to
guys are
anybody else's
cooking,
suggestions because
Yeah,
I feel truly that we have exhausted, with the exception of really beating people up and calling every day, it's a monthly issue. We gave them the month of December off. We didn't make calls during the month of December, and maybe we should have. I mean,
but I'd be more than happy to help people get registered, to
Oh,
fill
yeah.
out the paperwork too. I mean, it may be is something that you're taking a laptop and going.
once we get them to talk to us, it's 10 minutes. It's
Right.
over the telephone, we can do it for them right there.
I'd be more than happy.
It takes no
Because
time.
this was part of a culture change. And if you guys are around me much, I'm always talking about culture. I don't care what kind of data you have, what kind of strategy, what kind of information. If you don't have a good culture in your organization, it will fail. Culture beats data 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. So it was a culture change that we are not going to offer free preschool just because you say you can't pay. And so it has been, now it's a smaller sample size, it's 130 kids.
Right.
But this comes down to even waiting for the parents to come to pick their kids up at AM or dropping them off at PM. And when we send letters home, then there'll be a time where sometime it's me, Debbie, Chris, and we're all spreading out to different sites, handing a letter directly to the person. And if we got to go to that route, I mean, one of the greatest things I love is when I've got a meeting with somebody who doesn't know anything about Norwood, and I schedule the meeting, and it's about 3:15 in the afternoon. I'll say, hey, come on outside. We'll look out the window, and there's 150 parents on the lawn. I always say, see, it's still 1955 in Norwood. Parents come to the school doorstep to pick up their kids. Well, guess who knows who those doggone parents are? The teachers. And our teachers do a phenomenal job, even in Sharpsburg, where they're dodging cars and trucks, of walking their kids outside, and instead of using email and phone just to communicate with the kids, is going right to that parent. Because the teachers know who they are. My principals know who they are. And if we have to go to that level, now we're going to have some disconnected parents who aren't picking their kids up. They're never around. They're not invested. Those are going to be the tough nuts because they're not answering the phone, because probably we're not the only person calling on this similar topic. We've had parents show up when we have to call the police because we can really tell they're under the influence. We're not going to let them put their child in their car or walk down the street stumbling, holding their little kiddo's hand. That, I don't want to say it's common, but it's kind of about every week at least once. And so, but if we get it to that level, just like Debbie said, if I got to go somewhere with a laptop, plus someone I know is a pit bull and those types of things. So I know you don't have a bunch of time, but I'm offering you. So, because it does take a little bit of that with some folks. They're not going to talk to you over the phone because we're not the only people calling. And they don't know the voice. But if you show up and if you understand the culture, have an understanding or familiarity with the culture in that household and how you speak, And I'm not talking English, Spanish, French, German, just how you present and how you speak. You know, give you an example. My first day here, I said to Jim Helmkamp, paint over those names. We don't need personalized parking spots here. And it was, I had one, Central Office will have it, so paint over those things. But also there's a reason why I don't have a problem with my elementary principals or my central office who dress down a little bit. Because sometimes shirt and tie and suits intimidate some of our parents. Because the person who confronts them in shirt and tie and suit, they've been in trouble with that person. Or that person hasn't brought them good news for many years in their life. So if we're able to even go to the front porch, or yeah, I'll meet you at McDonald's, I'll meet you at the library, and it takes 10 minutes. And because phone call works often, believe me, I'm on a doggone phone all day. But some people, they're not talking on the phone. And some people, this is their phone, and they don't have minutes. I mean, at times we will call every name, every number in Dazzle, and every phone's not working. And it's because they don't have minutes on their card.
Right.
Or they've changed their phone number. And we don't have a single doggone number in Dazzle that is an active number. Or somebody else answers it. I don't know who you're talking to because they entered the number wrong. So, but I think we can take it down to that personal approach. And it's worked in preschool. I mean, one of the things I said to Debbie this summer, we cannot be free preschool any longer. And we had a big old debt. And we had some tough conversations with some people this summer. And, well, I don't want to say we, Debbie did. Tough conversation with people. And yeah, we have had to remove a couple people. And, but when you're diligent, but you're also welcoming, we're getting the money. We're getting the money. And so it's $90. $90 a month. Isn't that what we charge? I get so many numbers floating around, I don't know. I always say that's why I pay people. Tell me what we're doing here. But it's working. And we know when it gets more than 2 months behind, or there's a consequence. Sadly, the child is removed from preschool. But lo and behold, people pay. And I could throw out some names, but I'm not, that you would know the families. And they're paying. And it may shock you. And here's what I'm going to tell you. There's been some rough stories out of some of our preschool kids. Not the kiddo, what's going on in the roof, under the roof they live in. That would blow your mind. You would go, okay, I understand that. And when we give you the second and third level, you would go, holy smokes, that's a 3-year-old little guy? But somehow they're coming up with the $90. Because, you know, we do have parents who have a lot of, you know, mental health issues, social issues, even drug issues. But what I found that's unique to this community is to care about their kids. We wouldn't be passing freaking letters if 60% of people didn't care about their kids. And they care about their kids. And if you talk to them on their level, and you're stern but welcoming, because here's the consequence, but how can I help you? And you start telling them, you got 2 weeks. I mean, you start giving warning letters a month out. And Deb's making calls, letters, and yeah, sometime I'll need something proofread. I can't find Christina, so Debbie can come down and proofread this. No, I'm making calls. I'm the superintendent. I'm calling you down here. Can you proofread this? No, I'm making debt calls. And I'm making houses, all those things. It's where, yeah, think about this. Preschool is about 130 kids, but how many kids make up a chunk of that debt? Probably about 130 kids,
Right.
or less.
Right.
So I think we can attack it with some additional resources.
I think that was the most revealing part when we dissected it a year ago. And so this is not something, again, like all the things I just demonstrated to you. I mean, believe it or not, there's been a lot of thought and a lot of debates, and it's not that it's not warranted to have it here as a board. I don't know when I've opined on anything. I don't think we've done everything we can yet. And if we reach that point, that's when it becomes go to the board and say, we've done everything we can. We've got a very small percentage that's not following the rules here. It involves kids, and it takes a special touch to be able to make that call or to make that reach out. And I think we just have to, I don't think that Roger's shop has that resource, to be honest with you. That's not being critical. That's not his job. I think we got to figure out how to help.
That's why I mean.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
Because he's cooking, they're doing nutrition and teaching
Yeah.
and whatever. I've got more free time that I can, you know what I'm saying, as far as to drive, I can drive to a house.
Yeah.
I'd say as long as we're not hurting the kid.
Right.
Because I know
yeah.
for preschool, like,
Yeah.
that's not a required offering,
Right.
so that makes sense that they don't come. But
But you know the thing about that,
Just to
Sarah, is
tell you
that's a direct service to
oh,
that parent.
absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
childcare. They're
Yeah.
they're going to find a
Very
way.
inexpensive childcare.
A very inexpensive childcare. They're
Absolutely.
going to find some way to get out from under that. Their kid getting here and having to fend for themselves on getting lunch or not, that's out of sight, out of mind in some ways. I guess I am a softie on that. I think you ought to have no-bake cookies every day and toasted cheese sandwiches with tomato soup.
Yes.
So on that subject, nap time. Can we move to the nutritional guidelines? Because I know there were some
Yeah.
questions as to what we can.
Let's try to get this wrapped up by about quarter after.
I'll get you quick. I handed you out a whole bunch of paperwork. There goes through all of the guidelines. I was going to let Liz speak for a little bit about those guidelines in sort of a rambling. This is the craziness that we deal with when it comes to this color vegetable, this often, this much sodium, this many calories. If the guidelines are written for first through K through 5th grade, 6th through 8th grade,
9 through 12.
and then 9 through 12. The problem we have is we are to 6th grade. So now our window of opportunity on calories gets shrinked in half because we have to meet a medium of that because there's a middle school kid at an elementary school. And it makes it even more challenging. We do all of that on the $3.18 that we get reimbursed by the state. You know, you guys, this isn't going to Panera Bread or Chipotle and spending $6 on a burrito. This is $3.18 when they get a burrito, and you've worked on the burrito line, a roasted vegetable, fresh fruit. I mean, we do this style of food. And then we've got labor, and we've got benefits, and we've got our labor. I mean, there's a lot that's involved in that. There's a lot of stuff that we don't have to currently pay a whole lot of that other schools may, you know, that we want to be able to be more self-sufficient in that regard. So you have the guidelines there. Any of you have specific questions when it comes to guidelines, you are more than welcome to email Liz or I, and we will give you very detailed explanations to those. When it comes to smart snacks, and I shared a photograph with you earlier today, yes, there are guidelines and regulations as to what is allowed to be sold on school campus between the hours of 6 a.m. and midnight the following day. All right? That's pretty much always, right?
I take it I shouldn't have bought that box of band candy.
Right. You know, guys,
It's not to keep it to the confines of the cafeteria.
I don't police
Yeah.
the entire school district. If I did, it would be horrible.
Well, we'd have so many
But in the
groups that can't do what they
cafeterias.
do.
Right. In the cafeteria, during lunch, that child, that parent may give them 40 cents, then maybe they keep that and they spend it on a candy bar because it's in front of them in the cafeteria. In the cafeteria, I can police it, and we do. What I generally do with that student that I find, and today I didn't because he was caught by Mr. Winterrun before I could get to him. I will go up to the student, I will sit down with them, and I will say, I'd like to buy a candy bar. And I buy a candy bar from the student, and then I explain to them that that's the last one they will sell in my cafeteria.
I bought a box.
You already got a whole box.
I love
He
that.
doesn't buy a whole box every day.
I think
Sure about that.
Allison's selling, so I bought it.
So that smart snack guideline that you see there, you'll see the actual, you have two pieces of paper that say smart snack. One of them is a PowerPoint presentation that we kind of put together, a one-pager. We got to make it simple for people to understand. We send it out to the teachers at the beginning of the year each year to remind them. Okay, here's a solution, future solution. It's still in its beginning stages of replacing the candy bar sales. They will buy our hot sauce. They will buy our barbecue sauce from us at our cost. We're not going to mark it up. We're not going to make money on it. And then we will give them a recommendation on what they should sell this product for in order to make money for their program. This meets the guidelines. These meet the nutritional guidelines. This hot sauce costs us 50% of what we would pay to buy our own hot sauce. And the sodium levels drop through the floor on this. And it's shelf stable. And it's our recipe. It's made locally in Burlington, Kentucky, and bottled for us there if we want. We actually purchase it in bags because we don't really use the bottles yet. But this is an example of what we're looking to try and do with our program. Right? We're trying to market this type of thing to help make it even better. So we are truly a more well-rounded nutritional program. This meets those guidelines. These are all shelf stable in dry storage. This is our barbecue sauce, our marinara, our lentil chili. All of those items come from a outside sourced manufacturing facility that does this for us. utilize mostly local vegetables when available. We are able to buy this for less money than we can make it because they use B and C grade vegetables. Now, what does that mean? A grade vegetables are the ones you see on the shelf at Kroger's that you guys all pick out. The tomatoes that are all the exact same size, the same color, that have no dimples, no bruises, no nothing. B and C are the ones down the line, the ones that aren't as pretty. They use those products. When we turn them into a sauce, it doesn't matter what it looks like. But they can buy those because they buy them in huge quantities directly from farmers. They cut out the middleman that we can't necessarily do.
That's where that's not good.
So we are looking at an Alfredo sauce for them to start doing that's made with white beans. We're looking at them doing a tomato soup that we offer. Once we start doing that, we can start bringing tomato soup back to the elementaries because right now it's impossible to transport cooked tomato soup in big, huge containers with lids on in our truck. And we can't cook it here at the elementaries. So those are some things that we are trying. Right now, I'm working with these guys. I'm trying to get them more consistent on the product. The greener the tomato, the lighter color my sauce. I want my sauce the same color every time. So we're working on some of that stuff. We're getting through those bugs. But it's a neat opportunity, and it's something that nobody does anywhere else. The nutritional guidelines we went over. Breakfast in the classroom. We are rolling out breakfast in the classroom at Sharpsburg Elementary. We've already started it on Fridays. Here's the thing. Breakfast in the classroom at Williams has been phenomenal. We averaged approximately 68% more breakfast, or 68% is our participation at breakfast at Williams Elementary. Our other elementary schools average around 35%. 68%, $12,240, or I'm sorry, more breakfast per school year, which equates to $24,480 in additional revenue. That's not bottom line, it's additional revenue.
We get more kids having breakfast in their stuff.
And it's also better attendance that we've seen out of Williams and less students being referred to for disciplinary issues. We've seen those increases. If we see that same increase at at Sharpsburg, then we can see the numbers go to 26,640 extra breakfasts per year and an additional $53,000 in additional, that's at VIEW. So once we do roll this out in VIEW in the future, that's what we're looking to do there. Breakfast in the classroom is a huge revenue source for our program, but it's also building a better student. It's making a kid that shows up for school on a regular basis, and it's making a kid that is actually more prepared for their school day, and they have better behavioral issues, as well as moving. The other thing that ties into that normally is moving recess before lunch. So we have those. The last and final thing that I have, and I'll turn it over to any questions, is we recently received a grant, a relatively large grant. It's called the School Food Support Initiative. It's out of the Whole Foods and Chef Ann Foundation. Chef Ann was a food service director that was doing what we're doing now, or she was doing more than what we're doing now 12, 15 years ago in Berkeley, and now she's in Boulder Valley. And they've created a huge foundation. The overall value of the grant is around $160,000 to $180,000. It's not money that they hand to us. That's in training, that's in support, that's in travel, that's in, you guys are going to Chicago next Thursday and Friday?
Yes, next Friday.
We'll be in Boulder, Colorado for Thursday and Friday for the beginning parts of this grant to discuss it more in details. They'll come to our schools, they'll travel, they'll spend days in our schools assessing our program. We welcome that. As I welcome any of you, please come into any of our kitchens, any of our cafeterias, any day, and tell us what you think we can do better or how you would recommend us to do it better, because we welcome those things. We want anybody that offers ideas or suggestions, we embrace. That's the reason we work so closely with the dietetic program, because they bring fresh ideas every day, and they keep us on our toes, and they help us keep pushing our program further and further into the future. Which I believe is, again, to circle back on what I started with, the importance of helping making a healthier, better student for our schools. Questions?
Well, I know it was very entertaining for me to see Mr. Faulkner in a hairnet when he was working at the high school. But he was serving lentil chili. That was really good.
I enjoyed it.
Do you have to wear a hairnet?
I
I chose to.
You do have to.
Me? No. I just take 30 seconds, cut my hair in the bathroom, and I'm good to go.
Well, we did post photos on Twitter, but we also currently, in the last 30 days or so, have developed our own Facebook page. So we now have a Norwood Food Service Facebook page, and we're putting the things that we do with the life skills class and the 2-bike clubs and all of the other things. We're also planning on putting our menus on there, getting all of our nutritional information on there in the future, links to get to the online free and reduced application, all of that stuff. We're trying more and more ways through social media to market our program and what it is that we do and get the information out to our families.
Any questions for Ryder?
Or Liz,
We're live.
or your fellow resident.
Hey, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you
I
very
appreciate all
much.
the information. Guys, let's take about a 5-minute break. If you hit the restroom or if you want to get some more food.
Kids eat like that, I eat peanut butter and jelly.
I
Yeah.
know.
My wife's accusing me when I eat the paper.
Would you like us to leave the fruit?
I'm good. I'm gonna finish
If
this.
anybody wants anything else, grab it down. It's going away.
I want a taco right
I like the bottom.
I actually think that might sell. I don't know what the cost would be.
Sir, you got 240 half down there, right?
Have your own website.
It's a guaranteed surgery.
Yeah. He said that Dave bought chicken sandwiches from McDonald's or something. They were out of 13.
I'll send you a list of my notes. You tell me what you like, what you don't like.
Dave said
Don't
that
hesitate to do
well, there's a special list. Give me a sky.
When surgery sends just about every night. Surgery, Maggie. Special send one videos. I was watching Carter's deadlift was starting.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one I got. Long list for.
Sorry.
What's neat is most of this can be having different meanings. Because we don't have 5, 7.5, 10. Yeah.
I'll shoot you an email. I appreciate it.
Fireballs, some bands.
I'm ready.
She's been
No, I'll buy it when you get ready.
And then we get it all like this, not just easy.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's amazing now that we don't have to make 60 gallons of this at a time, how much more time we have to spend on.
And we're like putting more water, but happy to serve the
I
water.
like that.
Roger, can you spare that hot sauce bottle?
No.
Really? I'll remember that.
I honestly have one.
Okay, is that your only one?
Yeah.
Not your only barbecue sauce bottle?
No, I kept one in my office.
Okay.
But I
When
ended
you
up,
get a second one, throw it down there.
I will.
Okay.
I'll sell one to you.
$1 donation purchase.
You know what this goes for in the Kroger's? How much would you pay for a bottle of hot sauce this size or barbecue sauce at Kroger's?
$4.99.
Yeah, anywhere from $4 to $10 depending on who it is.
When I was
So,
in Florida, we went to Bubba Gump's. I paid $9 for a bottle of
right. So, you know, I don't actually have pricing.
Oh, no.
Took it, didn't they?
No. He was really nice. He said I didn't look like a terrorist.
You're kidding.
Let you take it? What?
You know, our goal ultimately about 10 years down the road is to have all this marketed in Jungle Gym. I
Well,
know Jungle very well.
that's not my goal. My goal is to get Cincinnati Public to buy barbecue sauce or to buy our hot sauce.
Who?
Cincinnati Public. If they start buying it, then there's a kickback that goes back to KHI crediting our account so that we get discounts, huge discounts on what we purchase for use in our
I
school.
don't think CPS is gonna buy anything that they gotta put a big M label on it.
No. They can label it however they want. They can customize the labels. That company does that as well. Now, I have pricing at this stage. I don't have pricing for it being bottled yet. So I can't tell you what this will cost me. But if this costs me less than $2 and they sell it for $4, which is the least amount of money you can probably get one of these for, there's a lot more margin in that than there is in the candy bars. And they can sell this in the cafeteria. Well, no, they can't. They still can't sell it in the cafeteria because they can't compete with my program. Even though it is and it isn't, right?
I know when I first got here, as assistant principal, I've been a business manager for all these years. I'm staying in the cafeteria every day and I'm saying to Brad, who's the food service director? Because every day we've got ice cream, root beer floats, candy sales, chocolate sales. I said, that's a federal violation. It's a violation of federal nutrition guidelines, plus not allowed to compete, plus our kids are buying this crap along with me instead of buying what's in the line. And then when I became superintendent, I'm like, okay, well, we have a $330,000 deficit in food service, and that wasn't helping. We got a milk machine down there, that's that empty. And when I was at Fairfield, we were a National Dairy Council. We got a visit from TJ Hushmanzada and everything. And so that's when the fight for the milks were huge.
Right.
And we had an empty milk machine down there. He said, Stacy, why don't you fill that dude up? We're gonna make money off that. Plus, if we can have the kids drinking milk, you know, vitamin D, calcium, everything.
And that works great if you talk to the dietitians who aren't in the room right now. That works great at the real elementary, the developmental stages. But when you get to be high school age kid, you know, where the milk isn't as big a deal. You're going to get your calcium and those things somewhere else. The fats that you're going to get from it are as negative. What you need more of is the water. The reason we brought the water to the table is, number one, you know, we invested on the nice fancy decanters, but the water's free. Norwood's actually got good water. It tastes good. I lived in a lot of communities that don't. And then we flavor the water. We're getting more and more kids to take the water. Hopefully, they don't take as much of the milk, which actually increases my margins on the overall plate cost, because they're just throwing the milk away. And so we hope to see that number change as well. That help to affect our program as we continue to get more refined at what we're doing. So come have lunch with us. I'll put you to work. I have a chef coat that'll fit every one of you.
All right, guys, go ahead and jump on the agenda.
Thank you.
Facilities master plan. I'm going to do my best to keep this real short. We'll have on the board agenda for next Thursday, the board will be asked to approve to authorize the treasurer for advertise for bids for all the security entrance work and middle school tuck pointing. That is my facility master plan. And it is getting, we're pretty much having daily meetings right now. I'm not in all of them. John is in all of them with the architects as we're tweaking, finalizing every last where a door hinge is. And then executive session next Thursday, we'll be taking a tour. Make sure you pack lunch, you got your permission slip from somebody at home, and I'll have you guys fill out emergency medical forms and all the good things. And since it's dark, I'll have a flashlight. Everybody's going to have to hold a rope so we stay in a single file line. But I think you'd be really impressed with the ingenuity in some of these, especially Sharpsburg. Really all of our elementaries. Here, the high school's kind of easy. That's real easy. The middle school was probably the most intricate. I'll give you a 30-second. We're moving the steps 3 feet forward. Removing the marble, setting it aside, we'll move the steps 3 feet forward, putting the original marble back. That's on the steps. That gives us enough room up top to be within code, to have the doors across the front and be able to take a left and go right into the only place you can go, right into the office. So that was the best plan that we come up with, and we had about 8 different options that we looked at. So, and we're still within code because of how wide the landing is when we come into glass. So we're still keeping, and even out here, we're seeing archway. We're respecting the architectural traditions in our buildings. So, because we have to have a secured entrance here too. And so instead of just having glass and getting rid of that arch and putting drywall down and making it straight, we're gonna actually have arched glass. And it's really not much more expensive, but we wanted to respect the heritage of the architectural heritage and structural heritage of our buildings. So, but you'll see all that. I can hand you out blueprints and drawings, and you would go, huh? So we're going to go right to the sites, and that's what we can do next week. I will probably shrink some of the board agenda, so I don't have you running around the buildings till 10 o'clock. Plus, Ernie and I have an early flight out the next morning, so I'll shrink some of the agenda. Okay, next item, construction supervisory job description. I passed that out in executive session last month. Pass it out to you again. I would like it, first of all, I want to get some feedback and then kind of give you a timeline where I'm thinking. This is going to be an interesting pursuit if the board supports in doing this, because one thing we're going to have is anybody we're interviewing, including advertising it in the paper and in construction trade journals, this is not a lifetime job. This starts and stops with the construction, because when construction's over, we do not need a construction supervisor. Again, I'm not going to read through every bullet point here, but essentially this is going to be an extension right off of John Peters' hip. Because this is large, and we're going to have jobs going at some points 16 hours a day. And we can't have one person really being the walking boss and supervising all this for 16 hours a day. And so this is an extension of John. In many cases, we're gonna need one person working first, one person working second, because construction will be that lengthy. John, we've relieved him from his, well, it's really just kicked in about this week and really more than next week. Relieved him from a lot of his filling in work orders and repairs and those things. But I can tell you, the majority of his day is already being spent on just the paperwork type things. And then on top of that, some of the issues that have come out, the air quality, still fighting with Duke on some things. And so John's full speed into this, but I truly believe we still, for a 4.5 to 5 year time period, need a construction supervisor. The job description you had that I've given you, it's very broad. So I didn't want to say this is only they're doing. They needed to have it broad, and they'll be working very hand in hand with John. Again, you see the salary range. We're not paying anybody near that top half. It's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. But that will help garner interest, guys. I'm going to be honest. Just like when we post an administrative job, we say, well, here's a salary range. Well, a lot of that's to drum up interest until we can get people in front of us and we can start to build a relationship in the interview process and give people reasons why you want to come to work for the organization. Ultimately, what we will need to do is have the job description approved by the board. Then at that point, I will put it in the paper. Of course, I'll put it on the internet. I'm going to post it internally. We don't have anybody who has these skills other than John Peter. So this will be somebody outside of our organization. I'll post it on our webpage. I'll put it in a couple different trade journals that are online or hard copy, as well as the Inquirer. So it's going to be a little cost advertising for it, but I truly believe we need someone who has some specific talents. Something where I'm really looking for is somebody who has some background and knowledge in working in 2 specific trades, guys: fire, security, and HVAC. Because once we get through the security this summer, fire and security systems and HVAC is a big chunk of our money that's inside of our bond issue. So it'd be good if somebody, now I'm not saying I'm going to hire somebody who's HVAC certified. I don't need a break fix. There's somebody who has experience in HVAC, somebody in fire and security, and also worked with or experienced working with a broad number of trades on a site where you may have 10 different trades together. But the knowledge really in the HVAC is going to be good, fire and security is going to be good, but also you're working with masonry, concrete. I mean, we've got every doggone trade, sheet metal, glass, and we've got everything going over the next 5 years. So that's just broad. If nobody is a HVAC fire security guy, but they have talent, that's fine. But that would be a preference. But if I don't find that, it's not like I need to have somebody who's got experience in teaching Mandarin Chinese on the job. So that's kind of where we're at. So I'll shut up, listen to what you guys have to say. My preference on this would be moving on this sooner or later, because it could be a 4 to 6 week job search, interview process, promoting, advertising the job, bringing people in. So, because the bids will be accepted at the April board meeting, and things are going to get real hopping then, because then all of our contractors start ordering materials, and we're having pre-construction meetings probably twice a week, all through the middle of April till the end of May, and then kids leave, contractors come in the next day. And they're on really tight timelines. We've got them having to be done by August 1st.
And where's their salary coming from?
It'll be out of general fund. Yeah. Now, Ernie, could we take any of that out of the bond?
I'd have to ask Brenda. We can take it probably out of the permanent improvement levy.
Okay.
Could pay it out of there because it's directly related to salaries and capital.
And when you go to post for this position, are you going to put that it's like a so many year?
Start and stop. Yep,
Start,
absolutely. Because I don't want anybody to come in.
Right.
And I don't want to waste their time. I don't want them to waste mine if they think they're coming because now they're going to have a 20-year career at Norwood City Schools. That's not the reality of this job. This is here while we have the need. When the need's gone, this position will go away.
And also like the preferred like HVAC or security fire, that kind, would that also go in?
I put that in there. I would say something like preferred but not required.
Okay.
Because that will drum up that interest. But honestly, I'm not going to say it's required because that could really shrink my pool. Because if I get somebody who's dynamite and they have a broad interest, yeah, I've dabbled in working, supervising HVAC contractors, but really here's where my strength is. But if their strength is working with large groups of people, then that's what I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
But so I'll put a preferred but not required on a couple things here.
Okay.
So, but I'm not going to say you have to have HVAC, fire, security alarm, and because we got a lot of other stuff. It'll be great if I find that person. If I don't, I'm fine. Bottom line, I need to find the best fit for the job. So, but it will be, we're going to be very honest up front. Here's the pay, and this is a start and stop. When the contractors roll 5 years from now, you're kind of going with them. Is where we're at. So.
No, with this being a lot different than just posting a job, internally and
Right.
stuff. Are you going to let us know how many people are applying?
I'll give you all the information.
Yeah.
Who applies, how many, all that. And John and I will go through all the resumes. Going to get some help from Steve Hammond and Paul, because honestly, this is what they do every day. They're in these trades, so they may know some of these guys and be able to say, yeah, he's good, or be able to go, hey, had some bad experiences on a job with that guy from X construction company or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll let you know all the names, who's applied, who we're going to interview, all those things.
And when people apply, does that come through your office or does that go like straight to John? Or who does
This will come to me. I'll have the resumes come to me. But John and I meet at 10 o'clock every Monday morning. And so as they come in, we'll be reviewing them. So probably leave a good 4 weeks of the posting open and then take a couple weeks to do the interviews. So I put on the advertisement application deadline. And basically what I'm asked for is a resume and references. I don't do the references on a request. I want them now. So that's where we're going to be. So it'll be about 4 week advertisement and then a couple weeks of interviews. I'll let you know everybody, information about who applies, who we're interviewing, all those things. So if you want to know that about teachers, I'll give it to you. It's going to be a lot of emails. Now, right now we have,
That's not my job.
we're going to have 4 openings that I know of right now for teachers. So.
That's what we pay you the big bucks for.
But this one is unique. And here's what I'm going to tell you. If you know people who have some interest and talent in these areas, send them our way. Because my job as superintendent is to have an idea, a short list in certain areas that I want to be able to go wham. Like I knew Lynn Yates for one day, but after 6 hours of talking to him, I'm like, this guy has got it. I want to get this guy. But I don't have this guy in the construction world. I may have back in 03, 06, 07. That was 10 years ago when I was in my business manager hat. So thoughts on progressing towards this?
Sounds good to me.
So what I would send out is this, but it'll be put into that format that Kelly does that has all the ADA and all of our legalese we have to put in the job description. I'll send it out to you guys by email. If it looks good, I'll have a title, feedback requested. If it looks good, then I'll put it on the board agenda for next week so that I can get the doggone thing posted by next Saturday. So, but I need to cast a wide net on this, guys, because I don't have a single name. I mean, I had some at one time, but I don't know. So I don't have a guy who I'm going, this is our dude. I don't. I mean, there's a construction manager I know, but he works for Ryan Homes and probably makes $500,000 a year, so I don't think he's going to come and work for $55,000 just because we're friends. Yeah, part-time for 4 years and then be unemployed. I don't think we like each other that much. So, all right. What do we got left on our agenda here? Last one, committee meetings and buildings. Sarah and I had lunch over to Pilot one day, and you know what? It was just a shame she didn't finish a whole cheeseburger. Sarah, I didn't call you out there because I respect you.
Oh my gosh.
I did not eat your whole burger. Come on,
I'm
you're
a
killing
slow
me.
eater is crazy. Like
You did take half of it back, and you promised me you'd eat it on
I
the
did.
job.
I did.
And so we were talking about, the subject of televising our board meetings, and I brought up an idea. Something we did in the previous school district is we had 10 buildings, so it took the whole year. But an idea of what if next year we visited each building one time. We can't do it for our regular board meetings because we need space. And I don't want parents not knowing where the heck they're going for the Rising Star because they assume it's at the high school. But for committee, we could visit each building one time. We could get a building tour by the principal. We could do a spotlight on that elementary. Gives them an opportunity for 15, 20 minutes to say, here's some great things that are going on. Maybe have some kids present, some staff, and do a focus on that building. We've had some pretty heavy topics and committees for the last 8 years. Levies, bond issue, a lot of things. Well, we're kind of, all that's in action now. So just an idea, bring them out to the buildings. We go to one, we can do one every other month, it'll be the first 5 months of the school year. Start in September. And one, I think will give you guys, I'm always out in the buildings. We're always out in the buildings. So give you guys an opportunity to be out in the buildings. Quit being a distraction, you two. I'm going to separate you. So I'm going to shut up. What do you think?
Do it, man.
Yeah, works for me.
Love it.
All right. Well, I'll probably just start high school on down because the busiest building in every district in the start of the year is the high school because you got a bazillion things going on in the sports and concerts and all those things. All right. There was left off by mistake an NCCS update. Debbie's emailing it to you.
I'll email it to as soon as I get home.
So, and then going down the agenda real quick, we got, we're switching yearbook companies because we're getting a better price and better service. Okay? And we've got the Norwood Winter Guard. This one is in the rears. Patrick called me, hey, we got a great opportunity to take the Winter Guard to go compete. Anytime we have an opportunity for our kids to compete, I always want to take it. We've done these before where we do it in the rears. We got spring sports people coming through. Got Maggie Dowling, our 4th strength coach. She's already in there working like crazy, has great ideas, and I think she can break you down, Kenny. We got 2 facility uses here, Navajo opening day and Norwood Young Life in the mini, and that is it at this point.
I've heard that before.
Here's what I'm gonna tell you. Here, give me my whole hand. Give me my whole hand. Give me your whole hand. Trust me. This one knows.
Hey, we are going to have one more bond resolution because we to give us the option of using a credit enhancement program at the state. So it's going to be last minute ad for next week. But you've approved it once, but now it's kind of approved to give us this additional outlet, if you will, for marketing it. Boy, if I had a code, I'd put it on. I was getting.
I'm dying.
What time here? All right, we are adjourned at 7:40.